Happy Hump Day, Canada. It is Wednesday, July 23rd. Thank you so much for making it to midweek with us. And right now, or recently, the provincial premiers have been in Huntsville, Ontario, for a big provincial confab. Our prime minister was there in attendance for a day. And while he was there, he made a sort of somber announcement. He gave a state of the negotiations announcement, dampening expectations of a U.S. trade pact by President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline. Prime Minister Mark Carney says it's time for Canada to look to other countries for opportunities. So despite the elbows up, despite the best intentions, despite our best efforts, despite our government trying as hard as they possibly can, and despite our country selecting Mark Carney as the best man to negotiate this deal, it seems like nothing is going to get Donald Trump to a place where he will behave like a good faith negotiator. And so our prime minister is sort of level setting and letting us know what the lay of the land is. He said, quote, "We're working positively for a deal. We'll take stock if there isn't one that works," he said on Tuesday after a 3-day meeting with provincial premiers. And these are complex negotiations, and we will use all the time necessary. But he also said, "We will agree on a deal if there's one on the table that is in our best interest." And he said, "Look, we have to start looking elsewhere." And so it is what it is. It's a shock of realism after we were a combination of foisting expectation on our prime minister and our prime minister asking for that expectation. That looks like, you know what, no one was going to get a good deal. This is what it is. Now, that being said, despite that, there is a lot of goodwill amongst our provincial leaders and our prime minister. There is a lot of work that is getting done. There is a lot that they can agree on. I've never seen this level of cooperation from our premiers and our federal government ever. This is the first time I've seen this happen on such a grand scale. Actually, no, that's not true. Meech Lake. Everyone agreed on Meech Lake. That happened. Not for nothing. That happened. And let's listen to the dean of the provincial leaders, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, raving about one leader in particular.
Okay, so full disclosure, Prime Minister stayed at my place. We had dinner. We were up till 12:30 at night, chatting in front of the fireplace, solving all the world's problems.
And you've got a very nice small chalet.
Yeah. I have a little shack up down the street there. And do you know what it is? Yeah, I'm telling you, I haven't known him for long, but the Prime Minister is the most humble person you'd ever want to meet. Let me just give you a little background. Now you got me on a roll here. Okay, the Prime Minister was a Goldman Sachs guy. He worked on Bay Street. He was the chair of Brookfield, which I think is close to $1 trillion fund. Chair of Bloomberg, everyone knows Bloomberg. Bank of Canada governor, Bank of England governor. He has never said that in his entire time I've known him. He doesn't do that. He's very humble. He listens. He's a smart business person. And I always tell my business owners, who would you give the keys to? I'd hand the keys to a business over to the Prime Minister. He's business-minded.
All right, so a lot of goodwill between the Premier of Ontario and the Prime Minister of Canada, but a lot of goodwill also between the Premier of Ontario and the Premier of British Columbia. They announced an agreement where they are going to work on harmonizing the
workers,
the workers, so the regulations around their workers, as well as a framework to sell alcohol. And here's a little bit of an exchange between Doug Ford and David Eby.
You got a beautiful province, BC wine, and I heard, not from experience, BC bud. Okay, they ship a lot into Ontario.
So there's a lot of work between Ontario and BC, as well as, I think, Alberta and Saskatchewan and BC and Manitoba. They're all coming together, doing what they can to smooth over rough patches. I believe this is part of the whole interprovincial trade barrier discussion because a lot of it is the exclusive domain of each province, and so they've got to bring them down themselves. But like I said, cooperation is the name of the game, and so I will take it. I will take it because in the middle of the summer, as you know, we're gonna head into the fall where the House is gonna sit again, and the slings and arrows will be thrown. So I'm gonna take a season of cooperation before we get back to the conflict of the House of Commons, at least for the next month or so. That being said, just because we have this great news to be sharing with you right now doesn't mean we can't turn our eyes to Ottawa. And look, I'm gonna call it as I see it. It's economic malfeasance from Ottawa. And I'm not talking about this prime minister. I'm talking about the previous prime minister. All right. So here's some information that came out in the Globe and Mail. We know that our immigration system has just been turned on its head. It went from being a point of pride for so many Canadians to a problem for this country to solve. Well, part of that is our asylum claiming system. The claims rose. In 2017, there were about 50,000 people that applied and claimed asylum status in Canada. In 2024, that number more than tripled to 173,000. From 50,000 to 173,000. My theory is Justin Trudeau wanted to get the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was going to open up this country to show how big our hearts were, to show how big our wallets were, and he was going to stop at nothing until he got it. He didn't get it, and we got stuck with the bill. And when I say we got stuck with the bill, here's what I mean. So we had to put all of these asylum seekers somewhere. They came here as fleeing somewhere, so they didn't have a house, they didn't have anything. They came as they were looking for refuge. So we had to start putting them in hotels. And since 2017, the bill is now due. We owe $1.1 billion just because we've been housing people in hotels. $1.1 billion more committed in the 2024 budget to extend this program over 3 years with a focus on affordable housing, whatever the hell that means. So let's talk about the hotel housing program. It began in 2017. And look, it served a purpose. We had overwhelmed shelters because we let in 3 times as many people as we used to. And the federal government started booking hotels directly. They started taking them over, as a matter of fact, operating them themselves. At their peak, we as a country were running 46 hotels across the country, costing on average $205 per night. Currently, in 2025, there are only 5 hotels now still in use, 1 in Quebec and 4 in Ontario, with 500 asylum seekers housed. In 2024, the government started telling people, you got to get out. There were 13,000 asylum seekers still left in hotels as a result. And the claimants receive assistance with housing, employment, and education during their hotel stay. Now, in and of itself, this is a problem. But what does this actually mean? Why is this more than just a $1.1 billion problem? Because in the city of Toronto, your property tax went up, my property tax went up, and you would think that with that massive property tax hike, it would come with a commensurate improvement of services. But none of that happened. Why? Because we're paying for this stuff. The increase in our taxes is going to paying for this. The government in Ottawa offloaded this problem on the city of Toronto, as well as other cities around the country. They offloaded the problem on our city. Our city has to pay for it, and the only way for them to pay for it was for my taxes and your taxes to go up. So hospitals weren't improved, schools weren't improved, roads weren't improved. Nothing has been improved because we're paying for programs like this. That is why you should be upset. That is why Justin Trudeau you should keep him in the back of your mind. That is why this is a problem. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.